guys. So today we are going to start with 6.2, properties of parallelograms. So we're going to define parallelograms and talk about some traits that they have in common. Our goals are going to be use the properties of parallelograms to solve problems, so we'll have some algebra in there. And then we also want to apply the properties of parallelograms. And these concepts are going to take us into 6.3 as well. So the first thing you guys need to get down, and you need to know this definition, hint, hint. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral, a four-sided polygon with two pairs of parallel sides. All right, so the opposite sides are parallel. AB is parallel to CD, BC is parallel to AD. Now, notice right here that in order to say parallelogram ABCD, notice I'm in consecutive order. You could say ADCB, you could say DCBA, as long as you're going around the block in a consecutive order. We talked about that a few months ago. This is going to be your symbol for parallelogram. Looks like a little box. Now, all parallelograms are going to be quadrilaterals. However, not all quadrilaterals are going to be parallelograms. So just because it has four sides, it doesn't mean the opposite sides are parallel. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with this theorem here. If a figure is a parallelogram, then the opposite sides are congruent. So this figure is a parallelogram. It tells me that because of the fact that the sides are parallel. Therefore, segment AB is congruent to segment CD, and segment AD and segment BC are congruent to one another. We have a few more to get through. So you guys go ahead and write these down. Now you guys will notice here it has a little shortcut. That would be something that maybe would be more congruent or conducive for y'all to write down. That way you don't have to write all these words and you can kind of cut to the point. So if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then the opposite angles are congruent. Okay, so these guys are opposite angles and these guys are opposite angles. If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then consecutive angles are going to be supplementary. So these two guys add up to 180 degrees. They're consecutive, they're next to each other. These guys add up to 180 degrees, these guys add up to 180 degrees, and these guys add up to 180 degrees. And of course, the opposite guys are going to be congruent, which we just talked about. And then our final one that we're going to talk about here is that if a figure is a parallelogram, the diagonals bisect each other. So this is one diagonal. This guy cuts this guy in half, and this guy cuts this guy in half. Notice BZ is congruent to ZD. Notice these guys are not necessarily congruent to one another, so be careful with that. Okay, the other thing is I know y'all are like, do I have to remember all the names of these? You need to know the concept. So you need to know what I underlined in pink. You do not need to know theorem 6-2-4, blah, 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 blah. Understand the concept. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple examples, guys, just applying these here. So in parallelogram, CDEF, DE is 74. Let's go ahead and let's write it down. Millimeters, of course. We'll use our units. And DG is going to be 31 millimeters. The measure of angle FCD is going to be 42 degrees, so we want to find each measure. So we want to find CF. Okay, so let's go over here and get a different color. So I want to find CF. It tells me it's a parallelogram, so I know these guys are congruent. So if DE is 74 millimeters, CF is going to be 74 millimeters. So similar to what you guys have done in the past. There's not a whole lot of calculations for this. You're just using your definition. Okay? Now we want to find the measure of EFC. So where's EFC? EFC is this guy right here. Consecutive angles are what? Supplementary. That means that this is going to be 180 minus 42 degrees, which is going to give me 138 degrees. Okay? Opposite, congruent, consecutive, supplementary. And then it wants me to find side DF. Or excuse me, diagonal DF. Okay, so DF, it gives me 31, and this is also going to be congruent. We'll make these two blues. Well, this is 31, this of course is going to be 31, so 31 times 2 is going to give me 62 millimeters. All right, why don't you guys take a second and pause the tape, and I want you to go through and solve this problem. So KN is going to be 28 inches. The measure of angle NML is going to be 74 degrees. They're congruent. And the measure of segment LO is going to be 13 inches. Alright guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to extend this just a little bit and have a little algebra. So, same thing. It's telling me that WXYZ is a parallelogram. Okay, well therefore I know that the opposite sides are congruent. I also know that opposite angles are congruent. And I also know that consecutive angles are supplementary. So it gives me a couple of little pieces of some expressions that I'm going to need to do some algebra with to solve. Alright, so I want to find YZ. Okay, so what I want to find first is I want to find this side. However, I need to solve for A, so I know these guys are congruent, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it down here, and I know that 6A plus 10 equals 8A plus 4 minus 4. I'm going to go ahead and solve for A, so subtract that over, add that guy over, and you get A equals 7. Okay, careful guys, what's it asking you? Go ahead and plug your 7 in, so you get 8 times 7 minus 4, and we end up with 52. So nothing crazy, again, we're just using those properties. Alright guys, now I want to find the measure of angle Z. So I know that these two guys add up to be what? 180 degrees. So I'm going to come off to the side here, and I know that 18B minus 11, angle W plus angle Z, plus 9B plus 2, again, add up to be 180 degrees. Alright, make sure that we wrote the equation down right. Go ahead and crunch your numbers. You get 27B by tightening it up, equals 189. And again, solve for B and you get B equals 7, okay? Pop your 7 back in. And again, I'm trying to find Z here. And you get 65 degrees. Okay, so you guys go ahead and take a second, pause the tape, and work through these. So JG is going to be 12. It's not giving me any units, so I'll go ahead and put 12 down. FH is going to be 18. So that's it, guys. Let's go ahead and let's go through one more review of our properties here. Like I said, this is going to lead us into tomorrow as well. All right? So opposite sides are going to be congruent. So here's your parallelogram. Again, these guys are parallel here. Therefore, the opposite sides are going to be congruent. Okay? Your opposite angles are going to be congruent. So this guy is congruent to this guy. This guy is congruent to this guy. Your consecutive angles are going to be supplementary. The parallelograms are starting to look a little bit rough, but we'll go with it. So that means that we'll call this X. We'll call this X. That means this is going to be 180 degrees minus X. And this is going to be 180 degrees minus X. And then your diagonals bisect each other. So here are your diagonals here. Here's your parallelogram. So this guy is going to be congruent to that guy. This is essentially going to be the midpoint between these two guys. And this guy is congruent to that guy. And like I reiterate, guys, this is not going to be, you need to know these properties and how to use them. You don't need to memorize the theorem numbers. So here's your homework, and we'll do this in class tomorrow.